G'day, guys, and welcome back to the Supercoach Swordplay channel. You're on with me, Janath, joined by Rossco, and I'm joined by DR. Preview the finals. The AFL finals are on us. We got 4 cracking games to preview. We're going to take this from a Supercoach and a game day squad lens. So this is like the fusion. We have all the stats ready to drop for you guys in this video. But before we do that, let's just ask, Rossco, how's your weekend, mate?
Yeah, good. Been a bit of a busy one. Had a big night last night. So today I've been recovering. But now after crunching some numbers, I think I'm ready to get into some footy finals. And, you know, the week off was good from the footy as well. But I'm glad that it's coming back ready for week 1. What about you, DR?
Yeah, had a big one today. So Maxi played in the grand final and the boys ended up getting the chockies, which was nice. We thought he wasn't even going to make it to the granny because, as you know, Janath, I'm not a medical expert, but had some tendon damage and I've sent you the report through, but a bit of a miraculous recovery. Didn't do as much as what he'd usually do, but big part of the team today playing up a couple of years as well with some of the bigger lads. So very exciting, mate. Celebrations are still happening down at the footy club and getting a little bit wild. Let's just say that, mate. So there's going to be some sore heads tomorrow morning on Monday, but yeah, massive weekend for all the lads, mate.
So what you're saying, mate, is Max Kimberley, ruck forward DPP, 119k in Supercoach 2029?
Oh, potentially, mate. Potentially, you never know. But I don't know about this because I won't be eligible for any prize money in any of these competitions. Being a family member, so I better be very, very careful what I say there. But looking very much forward to the ultimate Supercoach GDS mashup tonight. Let's mix it all together, boys. Mix it all up and talk some finals action.
Let's do it. And look, this is like choosing between your favorite children here. So we're not gonna go that far. But what I will do, guys, is before we go into talking a little bit about each of the games, I just want to preface this by saying what each comp looks like. So Supercoach. Let's start with Supercoach. Each single week, you get to pick your own team amongst all the 8 teams that are playing. You need to pick, I think it's 2 defenders, 3 mids, 1 ruck, 2 forwards, and a flex. So that's a total of 9 players, and your best 8 scores count. You need to pick a VC, which is 2 times the multiplier, and you need to pick a captain that is 3 times the multiplier. So that works a bit differently to how normally we would play. Now, at the end of this episode, we're going to drop the code to join our league. So DR has sorted that out for us. So you guys will have a league to join, and the overall prize is $2,500. So not very, very shabby. It would go a long way in wedding planning at the moment. Then we turn our eyes to GDS. So GDS, obviously, it's more weekly/season. It's more weekly than seasonal as a competition. You've got weekly prizes. You still need to pick 22 players in whichever comp that you choose to play, depending on what variants you use, the bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, all the way through to your elites and your legends, sorry. So you'll need to build up some cards there. What we're going to do in this episode, just to break it down, we're going to go game by game. We're going to take you through all of the key data. DR is going to give sort of the forecast from an AFL lens as to what this game will look like in terms of, will it be a contested game? Will it be more outside? Finals obviously have a bit of contested side to it, but each game will be different. We'll then go through. Rossco's going to provide all the good oil in terms of the data from both Supercoach and a GDS perspective. I'm going to take you guys through some data from previous games that have happened between the 2 sides this year, as well as previous finals that have happened for either team. Now, for teams like Gold Coast, there's none of that exists, but Freo a couple of years ago, Adelaide all the way back in 2017. So we're going to try to keep it as relevant as possible. But then we're going to go through and identify the best lock, avoid, and pod from a Supercoach and a GDS perspective, and provide who we think is the best captain from a Supercoach perspective in each game. So, lots to get into, boys. How about we crack on straight in to Adelaide versus Collingwood? So the first qualifying final played at Adelaide Oval. This is going to be a grudge match, a return match from just 2 weeks ago where Adelaide got over the line over Collingwood after a narrow loss early this year. DR, sort of give us an outline into what kind of game you expect, which kind of players do you expect to perform a little bit better than they normally would, and which players may you think might be a little bit more out of the game?
Yeah, well, twice already this year. Both games really, really close. So if we look back to earlier in the year in round 10, 78 were Collingwood, 11 goals, 12 to 68, 10 goals, 8 were the Crows. And if you look at some of the stat leaders down here as well, goals, you had the big Fog, Darcy Fogarty, kick 4. Josh Dacos led the disposal count with 29, and marks went to Giordano Dawson, the captain this week. And I will talk about Jordan Dawson in a little while, but boys, massive on Jordan Dawson, let me tell you that. And then we look back to pretty recently in round 23, 59 with the Crows to 56, the Pies. So again, another really close game there. The goals, we had 4 joint leaders with Jamie Elliott on 2, along with Tex, the Fog again, and Tim Membry. Nick Dacos this time, the disposal count with 29, so it was his brother first of all. Nick this time. And the big Fog as well led the way with marks, 8 marks. So I know for GDS, marks are like absolute gold. You get 3 points. In Supercoach, not as much, depending on if they're contested. So he may be a little bit of a dark horse. If you're looking for a forward, a bit of a pod, could go Darcy Fogarty this week, potentially. But boys, we've got the usual suspects here. We've got Nick Dacos, who has had a phenomenal year in both formats. But the bloke that I'm really, really keen on myself is Jordan Dawson. Now, Janath, you mentioned a couple of weeks ago that captains step up in big games. This man is certainly in Brownlow contention, but he'll want to lead his team straight through to the prelim, in my opinion. We look at his GDS stats, Supercoach stat, particularly GDS, right up there when it comes to averages. So I think in both formats, particularly GDS, he's going to be pretty hard to look past. But in regards to contested, uncontested, finals are a different beast, as we know. I can't really think of too many finals that were uncontested and really played on the outside. So this is where the real big bulls and the more experienced bodies come to play. So I'd be even looking at some of those more mature blokes that can win their own football.
This stuck in my mind from the Adelaide Collingwood game in Adelaide is that Adelaide had 37 inside 50s to Collingwood 71 and still got over the line. And I remember in that game distinctly remembering how strong the Adelaide back six was against Collingwood in the fact that they weren't lowering their vision for Collingwood. And so I feel like when we're looking at this from a fantasy perspective and trying to forecast what will happen, it will go one of two ways. Either Collingwood tries to do the same thing and expect, well, we won the inside 50s that comprehensively. We can't do that again and lose again. Or alternatively, you see that they'll lower the vision a little bit more. It won't be so much smack the ball forward at all costs, but it might be a bit more meticulous. You might have a little less inside 50s, but on that side, you might see that Adelaide may have fewer intercept marks or spoils, which is key stats for both Supercoach and GDS. Knowing McFly McRae, he's a tactical genius. So I think that perhaps we might be going with the ladder there. But even then, I think someone like a Joshy Worrell could be a play regardless because he can do it even with minimal inside 50s, but also when there's a lot of ball down there as well. Rossco, what's your take on the style of game that you expect to come to see in the first qualifying final?
Well, I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen already in the first 2 games. They're not going to be shootouts. So I don't know if it's necessarily right that we rely on key forwards. I do have some data for Tex Walker because Tex Walker is sort of one of these mercurial players that can bob up and kick a bag. But you've mentioned Fog. We don't have the Fog's data here because he's just generally not really that relevant. But, he could be the kind of player that just bobs up and kicks a bag and, that's it in a game where both teams score under 70 points. So, I think low scoring is definitely going to be the theme. I think it's going to be hot, especially with all the off-field controversy that's sort of surrounding these 2 teams as well.
Big time.
So, I think there'll be a bit of fury, a bit of fight in it as well. It'll be a bit, crash and bash. But I think it could be one of these games where your reliable performers step up and we can trust them to get the job done for us.
Yeah. And with that, Rossco, how about we go into some data about some of these reliable performance?
100%. We've got some very interesting numbers here. Now, first of all, I had a look at Rory Laird. His last 2 Supercoach scores for the season were 141 and 120. And he's gone
Damn.
106 before that. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying we should chuck him in the back line because there's only 2 spots. I don't know if we chuck him in the midfield because there's only 3 spots there, you know. But game day squad, could he be one that we maybe pick up as a pod in a contender or a starter and just hope that he gets to work? You never know. Josh Worrell and Mitch Hinge also did quite well from a game day squad perspective against Collingwood last time out, scoring 116 and 112. And DFS has got Collingwood rated as the 3rd and 4th easiest matchup for designated kickers in the last 5 and last 10 games. So probably, despite being a contested game, you saw, as you said, Collingwood's high inside 50 tally. Does mean there's a lot of ball going through for the backman there for Adelaide. So some of them are quite tempting as well. Now, Jordan Dawson only scored 96 last time out for Supercoach against Collingwood, which is probably a bit of a down game. But as you say, finals DR, I reckon he can pop up and get to work. Before that, he scored a 132. And he loves Adelaide Oval, scored a 149 2 games ago there as well. So we know he has it in him to crack a big score. Nick Dacos is the other one. He popped out 133 against the Crows 2 weeks ago. But before that, only 95 and 105. But he does love Adelaide Oval. I've personally been there watching him pick up 45 touches at Adelaide Oval against the Saints. Janath, you were there. He ran around unaccompanied all day in the shopping centre. And he just racked the ball up. So one other thing I sort of wanted to touch on with this game is I actually think that this is the game where you're going to have to pick your ruck from this week, whether it's in GDS or whether it's in Supercoach. Now, we've got Riley O'Brien, who scored 78 GDS, which is not the greatest, but Darcy Cameron had a day out against what's the easiest matchup in the last 5 games for Supercoach. Riley O'Brien. He scored 145 GDS and 142 Supercoach. So we'll get into the other games later, but given the nature of some of the restrictive rucks that are in those games, I think Darcy Cameron could be the one that we play this week in Supercoach. What do you reckon, boys?
I agree. Yeah. I've got it written down here. He's actually the number 1 averaging ruck that we've got available for finals eligible sides, mate. 14 points in front of me, who's the next option there. So really, sometimes I know we can get caught up with these matchups, but a seasonal average of 14 points difference, that's almost enough for me to even put a matchup aside if I need to and just play the bloke, to be quite honest. So I'm absolutely with you. Darcy Cameron is the ruck that I'll be playing this week on field for sure.
And from a Supercoach, so just very quickly, from a Supercoach perspective, we're very fortunate as well that Cameron doesn't play in one of the more popular Supercoach teams because we've got the 2 player per team limit. You're probably going to go Cameron and Dacos. I feel like most teams will go that combination, and we're pretty lucky that there aren't too many other relevant players, maybe Josh Dacos, but apart from that, you're not really picking anyone else unless you're going for that pod type play. So Cameron's a lock and load for most teams, you would think.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. If you take those 2, then obviously you're fading every other Collingwood player. That's it. You can't have any more. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And just finally, Riley Thilthorpe and Ben Keys, 2 good forward options for the Crows. Keys scored 131, Thilthorpe 115, and they both went plus above 120 against North for GDS. Now, it's not a great matchup on DVP, but it is a final, and the Crows are going to be looking to score. I did say it could be low scoring, so they could be a pod option for game day squad. I'm not sure if I'd have them in there for Supercoach, but the lack of other good options could mean that we end up taking one of them.
And I like the fact that he's a second ruck as well. So who's Collingwood got up as their second ruck? There's some bonus points in there. Hit out, clearance, kick inside 50 as well, get around a little bit. Even, you know what it's like for key forwards. Sometimes they get a little bit dry, but I think allowing him to actually get moving, get involved in the play as well, that's also a big bonus for Thilthorpe. And that's the difference between a Thilthorpe and someone like your Fog, is that you know that the Fog parked more down forward, whereas Thilthorpe will actually be able to get a bit more involved in the play potentially. But the big caveman could be a good selection this week.
And I'll give 2 more sort of points for that. Here at Supercoach Sword Play, we don't just talk about stats, we talk about weather. as well. How about that? So round 23, if you boys remember, it was pissing down. Like the whole game, it was like a flood out there. And the fact is, like, even if he kicked it on his head, he marks everything in dry weather. But in wet weather, obviously a bit more difficult. Now, I've done the research. It is going to be 19 degrees, 0 to 1 mil of rain, 40% chance of rain. So much, much better weather on the books in Adelaide. And look, that's the caveman to a T. The other thing that I just want to mention very quickly is that he's a finals type player, because owning him in Supercoach, he was on about 33, I reckon, at 3/4 time. Got to 68 from a big goal at the end. Both of the Collingwood Adelaide games have been close. So I'm talking from a Supercoach perspective here, because there's no scaling as per, say, in GDS. But he can score bulk points very, very quickly, even against West Coast the week before that. The way that his scoring trajectory goes, he takes big pack marks, he kicks big goals. So if you're looking for that kind of play where in a close game, it may just be a mark, a contested mark, an intercept mark, and his score can go like that in a flash. So a great forward option, and we can see how much red is on the board for the three players below him. Like in terms of Keys, Walk, and Elliott, you're probably not picking another forward from this matchup unless you're looking for that pot option. And so Thilthorpe really does stand out for sure. I'm gonna bring up some data from the previous couple of games that finals that these teams have played in. So we can see here that both teams had 5 Supercoach tons. And I think if we're looking at sort of similarities, you can see that 2 of the 5 so this is, the round 10 matchup, actually. There was 2 midfielders for Adelaide in there. Over at Collingwood, there were 3 defenders. So the top 3 scoring players for Collingwood were Howe, Maynard, and Josh Dacos, who was a halfback at the time, which is quite interesting as just something to keep in mind. Okay, perhaps is this a trend? If we go over then to the second matchup, which was in round 23, we can see now that there was, again, 5 tons for Adelaide, 3 for Collingwood. Crisp, Cameron, and Dacos were the 3 for Collingwood. But we have a look at Adelaide, as I was mentioning before, with that all those inside 50s, Wayne Malera, Mark Keane, and Joshua Worrell all tonned up. Is this something we may expect to see in terms of the defensive slugfest, and potentially some of these defenders being quite good matchups to target from this game? What do you boys think?
Yeah, with Joshua Worrell as well, he's actually 9th for total kicks from the eligible finals players as well in GDS. So I really like him as a bit of a pot option for us down back. You see the data there. And again, the matchups looked the data looked a little bit different between the 2 games that we just looked at. But I really like the look of someone like a Josh Worrell as a pot. I think he may be a name that people may just scroll past, but he's definitely in calculations for game day squad for me. Supercoach, I'm leaning a little bit differently, I think, at this point because of the different scoring system. But I think that this system, GDS system, will allow him to flourish this week, particularly with that matchup as well. It's a nice matchup.
Now we'll do the same with GDS now. So looking at game day squad, the disparity is even better. So this is the round 23 matchup. If we have a look at Adelaide, Malera, Worrell, Cumming, Keane, and Hinge were the top 5 scorers in GDS for Adelaide. And what do they all share in common? They're all defenders/defensive type options, with Cumming probably being the winger in that mix. But they're not probably the 5 players you would think to be top scoring for GDS, unless it was Collingwood, that with sort of that flood with how much ball went inside 50 there. Again, Cameron, Crisp, and Dacos did well in GDS as they did with Supercoach. So we can pick them as players that they're probably some of the better players there. And then in round 9, Jordan Dawson. This is the game that I think that we're going to come to expect, isn't it, from the captain, like this kind of 150 type GDS game.
He's a very reliable game day squad scorer. Yeah, very reliable.
Nothing else really stands out, but have a look at this, boys. So Riley O'Brien, 96, Cameron, 96. You'd probably take that this week. And then even again in the return matchup in round 23, Cameron, 145. O'Brien is a little bit further down at 78. So it's going to be interesting as you say, Rossco, perhaps it will come down to those two ruck options as two of the better options we have this week. All right.
Yeah.
Now let's get on to talking about Supercoach. We'll first start with Supercoach. Locks, avoids, and pods. Rossco, you're biting at the heels before to put a name out there. So kick us off with your lock for Supercoach.
So I think my lock for this game is going to be Nick Dacos. I think I'm very keen to bring him in. And I'm very keen, actually, I think, to VC him and get a double score from him. I don't think he's the highest scoring option this week, but I think he's one that I want to be with this week for sure. Now, in terms of avoids, I'm going to go generally and avoid an entire list except 2 players for Collingwood because I'm going to be taking Dacos and Cameron, which means I'm avoiding everyone else.
Every other Collingwood player.
Now, DR, my pod, you've ripped him straight from the books there. Joshy Worrell. I've got him in my contender squad this week, sitting in the back line. Don't have him in Supercoach, but I think he's one to watch out for, definitely, as you say. And yeah, I think that covers it off pretty well for me.
Okay, that's Supercoach, mate. DR, we'll go to you next. Your lock, avoid, and pod from a Supercoach perspective.
Yeah, well, my lock from a Supercoach perspective is Darcy Cameron. As mentioned before, Rob hasn't been as tough a matchup as what we have been expecting. And the difference in average, again, it's just too much for me. So if I'm looking down the list here, it's tough reading. You look at you're gone, Nat, Grundy, you got English, Sherry, all these type of blokes here, and you think I just can't select any of them. So I'm going Darcy Cameron, I think, with this ruck matchup.
All right.
My lock.
Awesome.
What do you think? Am I off the rails there?
I don't think you're off the rails, mate. Very, very safe.
All right.
Very safe.
Now, you've actually taken my pod, Rossco. I thought I'd be pretty safe there with Joshy Worrell, mate. So, damn you. I can't take the captain as a pod either, can I? But do you know what?
No.
I'm going to go with Benny Keys. I'm going to go with Benny Keys.
Like
now, Benny Keys, and I love this bloke as an ex-Brisbane man. I'm not going off a heap of data here, but I'm going off the type of player that Benny is. He's not a flashy player, but what he will give each and every week, even in the home and away season, if he's 100% all, he'll give his absolute all. And I think come finals time that he'll even step that up to another level if that's possible. So this is more of a gut feel type pod and more of a pod because Rossco took mine that I thought I'd be safe with. So a bit of a last minute inclusion here, Benny, but just love the way that he actually goes about things, mate. So I'm going to lock him in there, I think.
Love it.
There are
and
some
then
ones there
your
that support your cause.
Oh, Rossco, what have we got?
131 and 112, his last 2 Supercoach scores.
Very nice.
112 was against the Pies. And he's also gone 8 before that against the Pies in a non-sub-affected game, I believe. So the first game this year went for 8 Supercoach, but then he went for 112. So you're right. We don't know what we're going to get. But if we go on by recent form, he's on form.
Like it.
Excellent, mate.
Who his last 3 games at the ton too.
Very nice. Your avoid, DR, from this game?
Yeah, look, this is a tough one. I'm finding it really hard. So who I'm going to say is, and he may not be on many people's radars, but Dan Houston, I think that we can get a little bit excited sometimes because, as we mentioned before, Collingwood isn't necessarily going to be a popular team to select from. If you're not going with Darcy Cameron, you're probably locking Nick Dacos, and then you might see him available down back, and it's more of a look at the name type pick and pick me. But if you look at his season as a whole, he just has not got the job done. He does have a little bit of finals experience, but lots of the other Pies players do, so that's no ultra advantage there. So I say don't look at the name here. Look at what he's produced during the season and just avoid him. Don't get desperate to select a random Collingwood player.
Yep. Awesome. I'll finish this up then from a Supercoach perspective. You boys left who I think is the biggest lock in this game, Jordan Dawson. The captain, pretty safe. I feel like a lot of people play him, just the type of game that he should show up in. I don't think he's going to be my GDS lock as well. So I'll put that there, just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. From an avoid perspective, I'm surprised we haven't talked about this a little bit more. And coming into the upcoming game as well, I think it's quite important to think about potential tags or attention. Now, in the return matchup, Adelaide clearly gave Lockie Murphy the run with role on Josh Dacos. And I've heard that Max Michelini is training as a forward this week with potential to come into the side. And if he does come into the side, Murphy was dropped for the round 24 matchup. But if McElhaney comes into the side, is he just given the straight run with role on Josh Dacos, take him out of the game? And if that's going to be the case, McElhaney plays forward, then yeah, I think that Josh Dacos is a pretty safe avoid, given we have some other defender options available. And then in terms of sort of a pod, Jakey Saligo. Now, the reason may not be necessarily form related, but the 2024 Showdown medal winner, he came second in the Showdown medal this year as well. He's a big game player, loves contested pill. I think this is one of those games for those players that haven't played in the final before and don't really know what to expect. Yes, there may be a little bit of nerves there, but for a player that's performed well in finals previously, I think Jake Saligo is definitely one that you may not pick ahead. You may not pick in Supercoach, because there's only 3 spots plus a flex. But from a GDS perspective, when we get to it, for sure, it's one to consider. But even if you're brave enough, you could go then Supercoach at the same time. So from a Supercoach perspective, boys, just to summarize, we think locks are Nick Dacos, Darcy Cameron, Jordan Dawson. Avoids, Rossco, you said every other player that's not D-Cam or Dacos from Collingwood. And then we said Houston and Josh Dacos DR. So, I mean, that's basically it. And then pods are Josh Worrell, Ben Keys, and Jake Saligo. Let's talk about captains a little bit. So I feel like there's 2 pretty obvious captaincy options in this game, isn't there?
Yeah.
Nick Dacos and Jordan Dawson. Now, let's pretend that the vice captain doesn't exist. If you had to captain one of these players, who would it be?
Dacos.
Dawson.
I was going Dawson.
But
we'll take Dacos.
Let's park both of those 2 because we're going to rank our top captains at the end of this episode. So this is like the Voice blind auditions. We'll take Jordan Dawson and Nick Dacos through to the next round and see where they stack up in the midst of things. Boys, in terms of GDS perspective, now, given the different scoring systems, we're going to have to take a couple of other players into consideration. There's more players across the field in terms of 22 players. So in terms of those locks that we mentioned, Dacos, D-Cam, Dawson, is there any other players that you want to mention as locks from a GDS perspective that aren't those 3?
I think in our forward line, Phil Thorpe might be one.
Yeah, I like that. In terms of just a player that you can, we hyped him up before, you probably know what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, and there's not that many great forward options in general for game day squad, I think. So given that we have to pick 7 compared to only 2 in Supercoach, I think Phil Thorpe should be one of the 7.
Yeah, agreed, mate. Like that. All right. In terms of the avoids, is there any extra players that we think we should avoid? Now, in terms of Collingwood, I still think that Josh Dacos is an avoid, even with having to pick 6 midfielders.
Yeah, look, no real big names, I don't think. Like, I could give you a heap of avoids, but they're just not players that people
relevant,
consider selecting, I don't think. So that's another reason where I find it really hard with the avoid section. I'm trying to think of a bigger name type player that I'd avoid rather than just going a random one down the list. So it is tough when you're looking for a big name player to avoid, but there's plenty there. I think you've got to be creative at times, but don't get too creative. You know, there's enough options that can get us by with all the 4 games that we've got.
Yeah.
It might get a bit more tricky next week, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. In terms of pods, I just want to put Rory Laird out there on the radar. Like you mentioned before, Rossco, great record. He's one of those elder statesmen that was there for the grand final, so should bring a bit of experience to that Adelaide lineup, especially with Alex Neil-Bullen there as well. So there's some real leaders in that Adelaide mix that have got sort of grand final experience before. And playing off of halfback, he should be quite a safe pick. Is there any other sort of pods that we want to mention, boys? That isn't Josh Worrell, Keys, or Saligo?
No.
No, look. One of Pendlebury or Sidebottom, the old veterans, could pop up, but again, with the other options
You
that
can't
we've
rely
got,
on them.
I just don't see why you'd go there. You know.
Awesome, boys. All right. Well, that wraps up the first game. I think this is pretty much a preview that I would be happy to put out on the AFL website. Like, this is exactly what sort of the Supercoach, GDS, all of that. Let's move on now to the second qualifying final between Geelong and Brisbane. Now, DR, you would have some quite fond memories from last year's preliminary final to get you book a ticket into the grand final, which you ultimately won. Take us through in terms of that was last year. This is the best sort of comparator we have in terms of what we can expect from this game. So,
yeah,
given all things change, what do you expect?
Looking back to last year, just amazing. And it was such a to and fro contest. There were times where Geelong would get the momentum, Brisbane would. I remember I think it was Henry towards the end, snap one over his shoulder to keep them in it. But Cam Rayner at the end of the day really stepped up there, sealed it for us. So great memories there. Two teams that are really experienced when it comes to finals action. Geelong have just had a crazy record when it comes to finals. I think Brisbane, this is our 6th or 7th final series in a row. So you've got two teams that are both really well coached, I think. Brisbane play the MCG pretty well. We've had some pretty good history there in recent finals. Geelong would rather be playing at home, as we know, but still can perform well on the G. They've got some really good runners like your Smith and your Holmes as well, who I think may test us. Even someone like a Josh Dunkley, who's a fantastic two-way runner, may not necessarily have the speed to keep up with those type of players. So the midfield mix is going to be really, really interesting there. Geelong have in the past looked to tag a Brisbane player, and that player's usually been Lockie Neal, but do they maybe go to a Huey Cluggage this time? I've got a feeling that they may look to lock down on one of our players. I don't know exactly who it's going to be, but I don't think it's going to be Josh Dunkley. So we'll talk about him as a Supercoach pick as well as a GDS pick a little bit later. But when it comes to our game style, I think that Brisbane will try to play a bit of a possession game, use the angles, look for those short kicks. Geelong will really need to be on their toes for that. Ruckman, do we just call that even? Do we just, we're not going there with any selections, are we?
I haven't done any data.
The Rucks will have much to say here in this game. But as a Brisbane supporter, I'm going in with confidence that we can win, but at the same time, I can see Geelong also taking care of us. So a highly contested game, boys, and I don't think the margin will be too big at all. I'm going under 15 points for this one.
And I'm sure you'll be there as well, DR.
Absolutely, mate, with bells on. With bells on.
That's it. Now, I just want to mention, in terms of transitions from last year to this year, Geelong have ultimately played a more transition style as well, with Bailey Smith coming in there, Maxi Holmes going into that midfield. Holmes was one of the best players before he got injured in the prelim last year. Do you see sort of the way that you boys got into the game last year was not a contested style of game? It was go, 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 down the middle, down the corridor. Could you almost see like a basketball style game in a way happening, like where both teams just try to go end to end and it's not one in the trenches?
Potentially, but it's easy enough saying that that's the way that we're going to go. But both teams, I expect to be really, really switched on. So I think that the defense is going to be a massive part in this game as well. And you talk about your Smiths and your Holmes, that actually concerns me a little bit, because I don't really know if we've got the players to run with those blokes if we need to. Dunkley's great in the trenches, but that speed does worry me a little bit. Jared Berry, again, is a good runner, but I don't think he's really got the speed. So I do expect those two blokes to have a relatively solid game as well, and they're going to present a bit of a challenge for us. But Brisbane are not a tagging team. We tend to back our midfield in against the opposition midfield, and then if someone's completely off the rails, and we may look to make some sort of a change, and that's usually Josh Dunkley these days. It used to be Jared Berry, but he's really got that wing role. So it's going to be, I think, for the Geelong midfielders, I wouldn't expect a heap of close attention. Like, I don't expect anyone to be wearing Holmes or Smith like an absolute blanket, put it that way.
Rossco, how do you see this kind of game? Which sort of players, which type of players do you think it's going to be most conducive for?
I actually don't think, unlike the Adelaide Collingwood, I don't think we can use any past history between these teams as a reliable indicator for scoring. I think that this game is just going to be frantic, end-to-end, high scoring, big moments, all that sort of thing. And I just think it's just going to lead to some huge monster scores. Now, in terms of sort of where I can see it finishing, I think it will end up being close. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be one of these dour games where, everything's in and under. They're playing on the MCG, big ground, both star midfields. Like, I feel like it's going to be a game with a lot of run and a lot of dash.
Yeah. And in terms of the two matchups that have happened this year, now round three, early this year, I think Bailey Smith was a late out for that game. So we don't have that data point there. It was a close win by you boys, and 9 points. I'm pretty sure it was a wet weather game.
At the Gabba.
At the Gabba as well, yep. And then the return game at GMHBA was a big upset, with you boys sort of getting the Chockies over Geelong by 41 points as well. So quite comprehensive. But perhaps that's something that Chris Fagan's got Chris Scott's number now. But we'll wait and see in terms of that. Let's go into the data then, Rossco. Take us through sort of what stands out to you. There's a bit of green, bit more than last time, but what sort of stands out to you, mate?
I'm very bullish on this game. I know that on the right-hand side there's a lot of red for ease of matchup and that sort of thing, which is normally not good. However, we're not talking about, a team like Richmond or something like that where they're coming up to play against this hard matchup. These are, in my opinion, I think the two best teams in the comp at the moment. And I think that the matchup data, even though they're both tricky matchups, they have to play each other. Someone has to score. And I think, as I said before, it's going to be high scoring. So we've got three Brisbane kickers that we could sort of consider as a defensive option. We've got Zorko, who is averaging a bit better than the other two, sort of against Geelong. But then we've got Wilmot, who's averaging 120.7 across his last three games.
Huge.
The Pepsi Max King. But he's never scored above 85 in his last three against the Cats. So, DR, do you know if he's sort of taken up a bit more of the kick-ins, or is he taking a bit more of a distribution role? Zorko getting managed, less time on ground. Why is he gone up with his average in the last three games and Zorko's sitting down at 92?
I think he's backing himself in a little bit more. He's just backing himself in, mate. He's getting the ball, he's running and he's carrying with it. And the great thing about, and this is just from a Brisbane fan's perspective, is that the man can do everything because he can be a really good lockdown defender, really rugged and disciplined to his role. But at the same time, he can really attack. He's quicker than what people think. And he's also got a massive boot on him. So, look, we know what this man's like. He debuted in a final against Richmond, and it's finals time. So that means that the Pepsi Max King is going to really step up here. Talk about a bit of a pod selection. You could go worse than the Pepsi Max King and GDS, I think, Rossco.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to propose to you a bit of an interesting scenario here with these guys. So obviously we've got Wilmot, who's averaging 120 Supercoach. Now, the last game day squad game, he only scored 87. Now, I know, DR, that you've just mentioned he's really running. He takes on the ground with his long kicking, which is obviously long kicks are rewarded more in Supercoach. Game day squad, a kick's a kick. So you get scored all the same. Dane Zorko only scored 105 Supercoach in the last matchup against Geelong, but went for a 153 in game day squad. Now, could this be a matter of we perhaps take Wilmot in a Supercoach format as that Brisbane defender if you wanted to go that way, but then you just smash Dane Zorko into your game day squad, set and forget?
I'll say it now, Zorko's a lock. If you look at his GDS average, it's 124, and this is for eligible finals players. He's actually first for kicks, 479, and sixth for marks as well with 157. And I mentioned before, marks are huge in GDS as well. So number 1 for kicks, number 6 for marks. He's a little bit down there in the handball chain, as we know. That's not what Dane Zorko does. But I think they'll want the ball in his hands, because Fagan said this on a number of occasions that, yeah, he'll stuff up every now and then, but we encourage him to take those kicks because they open up the game so much. If you look at, was it a game or two ago, some of his kick-ins straight down the field, amazing, straight down the centre. I'm talking 60-metre type kicks. At least led to a quick goal. So I think he's an absolute lock in GDS, Dane Zorko.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, in terms of the 2 games they played this year, round 3, Zorko 145. Round 15, Zorko 153. That is ridiculous. But then we added on from a Supercoach perspective as well. So this is from the prelim last year. So Zorko 103 Supercoach, but he had 126 fantasy points. What that relates to in terms of GDS, probably high again. In the round 15 matchup this year, 105 Supercoach. And in terms of the round 3 matchup, 135. He's been getting it done against Geelong in the past. And there's probably not going to be too much that will change this time, especially if the Mullen tag, which is probably what's going to happen, goes to either Neil or McCluggage.
Yes. Now, continuing on with these midfielders, we've got 6 very genuine options, assuming Neil gets up this week. We've got McCluggage, Dunkley, Will Ashcroft, Lockie Neal, Bailey Smith, and Max Holmes to choose from. Now, the data is very, very good here. McCluggage loves playing on the MCG, averaging 143 in his last 3, and he's averaging 130 in his last 3 against Geelong. Now, Dunkley is going better in the recent term. He's gone 140 and 167 with a 110 in between for a 139 average, which was very nice to me in my Supercoach grand final there just last week. We've got Ashcroft and Neal, whose scoring haven't been as amazing as the other 2. Ashcroft sort of more of a pod option, I think, but Lockie Neal does have finals sort of experience here. He averages 138 on the G and 108 in his last 3 finals, with his last score being the grand final last year of 149. Now, it's a bit risky to pick him coming in off injury, and there's still that tag risk as well, but this guy knows how to put up a big score in a grand final. Is he the one that we take, or is it McCluggage? Is it Dunkley? Maybe not Ashcroft. But then we've also got Bailey Smith and Max Holmes to choose from. Yeah. Bailey Smith's flying 133 in his last 3. Doesn't go well against Brisbane, interestingly. You know, he missed the one earlier in the year, but he's averaging 89 in his last 3. Yes, and then we've got Holmes, who's only averaging 103 and 104 against Brisbane as well. But DVP does say that technically Brisbane are the 6th easiest matchup and the 7th in the last 5 and last 10 games. So do they bounce back with it being a final? Because if we pick them and they go 89 and 104, that's probably not what we want to see.
Can I say with the 3 Brisbane midfielders, so if you're talking about Neal, McCluggage and Dunkley, for me, Dunkley is the safe bet here. It's either going if they tag it, and I personally, I could be completely wrong here, but I think Geelong tag. I've got a feeling that they do, and it's got to be Adam Neal or McCluggage. Now, the other thing with Lockie Neal, and this is just a little bit of gut feel, I'm expecting Neal to be a little bit handball happy. I think if he can avoid kicking the ball, he probably will. So I expect, and we know particularly with the GDS type of scoring that the handball is not as valuable, and we know with both formats, but as the kick there. So for me, Josh Dunkley, he's actually averaging 122 in GDS. He's the 6th highest averaging mid. He's the best 2-way runner in the comp. Back to Supercoach. Look at what he did in that Supercoach final series for us. I think it was 138, close to 140 for an average during that time. And he's the bloke that steps up in these big games. And every game for Brisbane I'm talking about here has been like a final for the last 6 weeks. That top 4 spot, top 2 for roll, and even finals as a whole has been on the line for us. And he has been the bloke that has really stepped up, particularly in Lockie Neal's absence as well. So I like McCluggage's upside. I'd say that McCluggage has the most upside out of the three. I'd say that Dunkley is the safest. And I'd probably say, without knowing this, but looking back to history, that Lachie Neale probably has the most runs on the board. So it depends which way you want to go there and what you value. But for me, it's probably Josh Dunkley. And that may be of a bit of a surprise not going Clug. But it's just potential tag that does worry me a little bit. Does Scott just go, well, surely Chocky, coming back from injury, he's not going to be at his damaging best. We just lock down one of the best kicks inside 50, for example, potentially. So that does slightly concern me.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I'd want to add to that in terms of Hugh McCluggage has shown he can beat a tag. He bet the Jordan tag a couple of weeks ago. But what we have seen in terms of O'Shea Mullen is that he's not your ordinary tagger. Like, he probably is the most locked down kind of tag. We saw him get butters twice this year. Didn't quite get merit to the full extent in the second matchup they had. But I think that McCluggage, one of the things that we're underrating with him is if we have a look at that average in finals, 102, 123, 118. He's a finals player. All Australian for the first time. He gets it done against Geelong in the past, and perhaps that's why Chris Scott does go to him. But I think that both McCluggage and Dunkley are both great options in terms of, like, they can both get the job done. I think one thing with Dunkley, as an owner, in Lachie Neale's absence, his sort of responsibility went up a bit in terms of his CBAs got maxed to the point. Sometimes throughout the year, he was having like mid-60s, 70 CBAs. But I think Dunkley now sort of became the captain of that midfield. With Neale back in, does that change a little bit? And so I would probably have McCluggage just ahead of Dunkley in both formats.
Very
beautiful.
Fair, very fair. Yeah.
Now, we'll just quickly touch on the forwards. I think some of the forwards, most of these guys, are probably going to be considered game day squad pod options only. We've got Morris, who scored 114 last time out and 122 GDS against the Cats, kicked a bag. Can he do that again? Not sure in such a big final situation. Then we have All-Australian half-forward superstar, Zach Bailey.
Right.
He's up there with Darcy Byrne-Jones as a very forgettable All-Australian. Sorry,
Joshy Battle.
Joshy Battle. Very like nice. Come on,
Rossco. He's averaging 104 Supercoach in his last three, but scored 111 GDS against the Hawks last time out. Only 82, though, against the Cats in round 15. We have Rayner as well. Last score against the Hawks, 125 and 121 in GDS. He had a big game last year in that prelim final, 119. I think, that's 96 there, actually, in the prelim, with a big goal. So if he has a moment like that, he could be the one. Jezza Cameron, racing to the century. We know what he can do. Probably a much more safe GDS option than for Supercoach. If he kicks a bunch of goals and drags Geelong over the line, game day squad will be 150 plus for sure. But now, I think Brian Myers is maybe the one that we need to pick in both formats. I know I'm seeing a lot of red here. He's not averaging amazingly for his last few, but finals average just over 100, with his last two being 121 and 112. And I think when we look at some of the other forward options we talked about in the last game, we're talking about the next two games. We're looking at key forwards. We're not really looking at, these sort of smalls that can be reliable for Supercoach. We've got Ginnivan, we've got Bailey Humphrey, Dylan Moore, but I think I still trust Myers more than some of those options. What do you reckon, boys?
Yeah, one thing that I think quickly just need to mention as well, for anyone that hasn't delved into their Supercoach finals yet, is that you may be going to your forward line and looking to select B. Smith. Unfortunately, not available as a forward. And that goes for Max Holmes as well. Both of those blokes only have midfield status. So that's just something that you need to keep in mind when you are thinking of your planning for your Supercoach finals. They are midfielders only. So they may become a little bit less valuable in that format, given the fact that you can only select your 9 players. In GDS, still available in their usual positions. So I think that the value actually increases in that format.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
to what you're saying, Rossco, I think Zach Bailey's probably been the main beneficiary of Lachie Neale's absence, along with probably McCluggage, Ashcroft, and Dunkley as midfielders that were already there. But Bailey's gone into that midfield, had 44% CBAs against Hawthorn. I think he was mid-30s the weeks before as well. He's really added a spark to that midfield, wouldn't you say, DR?
100%. I had that on my notes there as well, because you talked about Josh Dunkley becoming the captain of that midfield. I suppose, I don't know what the ranks are. I suppose Rat Bailey came in as the general or the sergeant. However, I don't know what the ranks are, but you're right. He's the one that stepped into that midfield, and just that initial burst, that power off the mark. And look, his goal kicking's been a little bit off, but geez, he can sniff a goal, Zach Bailey, as well. So he has added another dynamic in there. Similar to like when Cam Rayner goes in there, it's just a bit of a different look for us. But that's a great thing. When you lose a soldier like Lachie Neale, other blokes step up, and then you've got another tool in your belt now. So it'll be interesting. He'll definitely get some time in there. I can guarantee you that. It would be Levi Ashcroft that will go to completely zero. I think he stepped up a little bit and got a little bit of time there. So he goes to zero. Maybe Bailey takes up a little bit of that time, but he'll still be in there. He'll still be in there, just not as much.
And so from that, I think that Zach Bailey and Myers are probably the two that stand out to me as forward options from a Supercoach perspective. From a GDS perspective, though, Bailey, Myers, Manor, probably very safe. Cameron, explosive, can go big, can get that 50 score. And then Rayner is a true wild card. He's a finals player. We've seen him do it before. Can he do it again? Can he do it again? That's the question.
Potentially. He's also more of a moments man at times, Cam Rayner. Like, he can be unsighted for a quarter, even a half at times, but don't write him off, because in that third quarter, he'll kick a couple of miraculous goals, get us over the line. So, yeah, big game player, but, yeah, reliability isn't his strongest suit, which we can forgive him for.
Awesome. All right. We might go through some data from just having a look at team by team, looking for a bit of trend. So this is the round 3 matchup this year between Brisbane and Geelong. We can see that every midfielder basically towed up the Geelong midfield early this year. Without Bailey Smith in there, we can see Dunkley, Ashcroft, McCluggage all went quite well. Zorko with the 135. Zach Bailey performed quite well. And then Harris Andrews was an interesting one that stood out to me. Are we sort of underplaying his value as a potential defensive option this week? For GDS, this is not Supercoach.
They'll try to make life difficult for him. It'll be interesting to see what role Harris plays. You've got Shannon Neale there, Cameron. They'll want to free him up if possible, but I've got the feeling that Geelong may try to put a bit of a lockdown forward on him and make life difficult for him.
Sorry, I don't know why I said that Bailey Smith didn't play this game. It must have been a different game he was laid out in, because he's there. He's just he's hiding. He's down here. Only 81 Supercoach, but this was one of the games that he had about 12 turnovers or something. That was the game that was that we're thinking of there.
We got 25 touches. So
Max
Yeah. 3
Holmes,
frees against.
Tom Atkins, Mark Blitzovs. There wasn't much relevance from a Supercoach perspective, but if we have a look at fantasy, Holmes, Myers, Smith, so that probably gives us a better tale that they performed quite well, those 3 against Brisbane early this year. We'll go ahead now to the second matchup this year. Again, if we have a look at the Supercoach data, and this is something the screen share's gone, but what I will do is this might just be a trend that we're starting to see is that the Brisbane players are dominating Supercoach. And whether it's because they won the game comprehensively, but we got 1, 2, 3, 9, almost 10 Supercoach tons compared to 3 again. Very familiar names there: Stewart, Holmes, Atkins, and then Bailey Smith's at an 85. But McCluggage went 130 in both games. He can't do it 3 times in a row, can he, to Chris Scott? Is that the mentality that we're going into this with?
That's what concerns me. That's what really concerns me, because when you look back at McCluggage's history against them, surely Chris Scott's got to say, enough's enough, Huey. We're going to make life difficult for you. Surely. I just can't see him tag and locking. I'm not Chris Scott, but
I'm glad you're not.
But we have another look again. Those midfielders, McCluggage, Ashcroft, Dunkley, even a Levi Ashcroft, all, and Lockie Neal had a quiet game, but they all performed really, really well. If you can predict who the tag goes to, or if Chris Cock comes in and says, we're going to go to Lockie Neal, I would feel pretty confident you can back in a Brisbane midfielder in both Supercoach and potentially multiple in GDS this week. What do you boys reckon?
Yes, I'm planning to do that.
Yeah. And then we'll just go ahead to the... Oh, sorry, DR. What do you reckon, mate?
No, as I said before, I think if I was going to go with one of them, I'd probably go with Dunkley, as I feel he's probably a little bit safer at this stage.
Yeah. And then if we have a look at, this is the prelim final from last year. Max Holmes was on 76, but he got subbed out pretty early in the third quarter. We were thinking, will he miss a second grand final? Not to be. Fortunately, unfortunately, I'm not too sure. But we see again, Huey McCluggage, a very familiar name there. So is Huey McCluggage, Lockie Neal, Josh Dunkley, these names are just popping up over and over again against this Geelong midfield. Is this the way we go? Brian Myers there performed quite well. I think Myers, that's twice now we brought up the name there. And Max Holmes would have done quite well. So those two are probably looking quite good. I've just brought up some other I'm just going to bring up some other finals for Brisbane here, mate, in terms of just players that have performed quite well in finals. Huey McCluggage, 118. Will Ashcroft, 113. Finals players. And so is that something we should also be taking into consideration?
Yeah, the other thing back on the screen there as well, mate, if you notice the last couple, that Lockie Neal has had a couple of quiet games, and that is the only thing that concerns me. McCluggage, when you look at this data here, he hasn't copped any attention.
Yeah.
So that's something that you need to keep in mind. It's almost like a bit of a gamble, isn't it? If you don't think McCluggage is going to get tagged, lock and load the bloke in both formats. Just go for it. But I just don't. I've got the feeling that that's who they go to as a Brisbane man. So the only concern for me. But damn, if they don't and you don't select him, you're behind the pack, I think, looking at this data.
He's everywhere. Like, even this is in the elimination final against us last year. He's everywhere. Performs in every single big game that we can really think of. And then just on the Geelong side, this was their prelim qualifying final against Port Adelaide. Max Holmes, Sean Manor, Brian Myers, Jeremy Cameron even did the job. So those, we can see what this is all sort of providing proof to the pudding of the key players in each of the key games. And the last thing that I'm just going to show to you boys is the GDS data for this year. So Huey McCluggage, Dane Zorko, Max Holmes, Josh Dunkley, Bailey Smith, Will Ashcroft, all above 130, but even Brian Myers, 126. So these are all names that we brought up before, and we can clearly see did quite well. And then again, Dane Zorko, this is in the return matchup, round 15, 153, Dunkley, 140, Will Ashcroft, 121, Smith, 113. No Holmes. Holmes is 86 only. But we saw what he has done in the past against Brisbane. So with all that in mind, that's a lot of data for that game. We'll try fly through this because we've talked a lot about this. DR, we'll hand you the new ball this time for your biggest lock, avoid, and pod for Supercoach from the Brisbane-Geelong matchup.
Oh, look, now, this is Supercoach-wise very much based on position and the players that we've got available at that position. And for me, it's Brian Myers. We've looked at the data. His name's been up there, not in shining lights, but remember, if we look too far back in the data, the role is completely different. So with what he's doing these days and the fact that we can't select someone like a Baz within our forward line, I think that he becomes a pretty obvious option for me. And also given the fact that someone like your Holmes and your Baz, you can't get down back or forward and they're only midfielders, then that lends it even further Myers' way, I think, because of limited options. So I'm going to lock in Brian Myers because we can select him as a forward.
As an avoid?
I'm going to avoid Lockie Neal. I just think I mentioned it before. I've talked already about it, but just to summarise again, coming back from injury, even though he is a big finals player, he has been tagged on multiple occasions when he's played Geelong. I think he's going to be handball happy. Even as an experienced player, having missed a few weeks, may have to blow out the cobwebs just a little bit. Do they even manage his time on ground? I think they can afford to do that now, even with Bailey being able to step in to that role, even someone like Levi Ashcroft if you're really desperate. So I hate to say it because I hope he performs well, but I'll be avoiding Lockie Neal because there are so many other options, and I'd be going McCluggage or Dunkley, two of his teammates over him. So going to avoid that man there, Lockie Neal. Hate to say it though. Yeah, it hurts me.
And your pod from a Supercoach perspective, mate?
Look, it's hard to know who's going to be a pod, but I'll go, back to Josh Dunkley because you may look at other names there. Someone like Huey McCluggage may be a little bit flashier, and he certainly is. He's got great history in finals, but he's just such a safe player. Attention will go for others. He's actually the 6th highest averaging mid in GDS. And when you look at his Supercoach, because this is obviously what we're talking about, I keep on forgetting Supercoach GDS type stuff, but he averaged more than someone like an Andy Brayshaw, which I didn't expect. It was that big final series that he had 138. I think that he'll step up, mate. So he'll be my pod for Supercoach, Josh Dunkley.
Cool. All right. I'll go off with my ones then. In terms of a lock from a Supercoach perspective, there's not too many defenders, premium defenders, that are remaining in the finals run. So I think Dane Zorko, he's got the runs on the board. He's done it before against Geelong, playing on the MCG, should be the main sort of kickstarter down back there. So Dane Zorko has a lock for me. In terms of the avoid, yes, we're crying out for forwards, but I don't think that Cam Rain is the way to go. He's a bit too flash in the pan for me. Yes, he can probably go from 60 to 90 with a goal, but actually seeing that happen, it's a bit hard to sort of say. And I think there's a bit less volatile players, let's say. But you could easily go Rayner and win you the week, for instance. That's the kind of player that he is. And in terms of pot of play that we haven't actually talked about at all here, Supercoach royalty, Tom Stewart. Now, in finals, it's just a one game, isn't it? There's always the risk associated with Tommy Stewart, but we know just the kind of player he is. And in the finals atmosphere, I think as the vice captain of the team, he should be up for the fight there. So, yeah, don't mind Tommy Stewart as a Supercoach pod. Rossco.
Yeah, and he's flying.
We've left you a lot of big names here. I'm very interested to see where your lock goes.
There's so many, isn't it?
Yeah. My lock, I think, is actually going to be my captain this week.
And that is?
I think it's going to be Bailey Smith.
Oh. Okay.
Now, I know he hasn't cracked the ton twice against them this season, but he loves playing on the G. His average is 118, including a 129 there just last week. And before that, a 131 and a 141. Now, we saw that he's still getting a lot of the ball. In those two games that you showed, he got 25 and 28 touches. You said with 11 turnovers and 3 free kicks against. Now, I know it's so easy to say, well, his score would have been so much better if he just didn't turn the ball over and he didn't give away those frees. Yeah. But I'm just imagining a world where he doesn't do that, and he lifts from 25 or 28 disposals to 35 efficient disposals. And I just think that equals a recipe for a big, big score, especially with playing on the G as well. We know he's a running machine. I think he'll try and work as much as he can to get to the outside and get as much loose ball as he can. And I think, very tentatively at the moment, but I think he's going to be my captain to go for triple points this week.
Very nice, man. And you could even call him a pod in Supercoach with, like what you're saying, DR, the fact that he's a midfielder. I think a lot of people may be thrown off by that and not really view him as an option. But
isn't it? Yeah. You look at it and you're like, oh, no, he's not a forward. Yeah. Take him out of the mix.
Yeah. Rossco, you avoid.
Now, we're talking Supercoach here. I'm avoiding Jeremy Cameron very, very quickly. Now, I think even if he kicks a big bag, it doesn't necessarily translate as well across the Supercoach. I know he did score 129 last week, but that was against Richmond, and I don't think Brisbane will give him the luxuries that he did get against the Tigers. In terms of game day squad, I'll probably have him in there as a bronze because in the event that he does get his 10 to 12 disposals and 5 goals, he's going to still score pretty well.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it works well for Supercoach. Now, my pod is going to be going up against one of the guys that you've locked in, Janath, Darcy Wilmot.
Okay.
I mentioned him before.
Okay.
I think I
Very
might
nice.
roll with it. I think I might roll with a Wilmot for Supercoach
Yep.
and a Zorko for Game Day Squad.
Ooh, okay. All right. Very, very interested to hear that. Well, Rossco, you mentioned Bailey Smith as a captaincy option.
Yeah.
I want to put forward Huey McCluggage because we didn't even list him as a lock, but he's the type that could shred a finals to pieces. So I'm going to put him in there. I think perhaps you could VC him. Like if you see him and he gets tagged, your week's done for, really.
Yeah.
But if you can get a double points off of him, it'd be pretty handy. Do you agree with Baz McCluggage? Do you have another player you want to throw into this mix as a VC for 2 times or C for 3 times?
He's going to be a bit of a pod pick, but Max Holmes, if you look back at what he's done against us, I don't know if we've got a matchup for him. He's going to be really hard to stop, particularly with his pace. So I think that people may look to avoid Holmes, but for those people that do select him, I think he could be someone that could get off the chain a little bit. So I'll be going elsewhere, but just a name out of this game, I'd probably be going myself.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, let's go very quickly to the GDS side of things. So we've mentioned Myers, Smith, and Zorka as locks for Supercoach. I think they're pretty safe locks for GDS as well, in terms of their scoring should only elevate from a GDS perspective.
Yeah.
Is there any other players we're going to call a lock? Holmes?
Yeah, Holmes is a
As a
lock for
defender?
GDS. Playing in the back
Yes.
line. Yeah.
Mana, Cameron,
Yep.
Mana and Cameron locks, or would you say they're more tentative? You could play them, you can go elsewhere.
I think it depends on what you expect some other players to do. I think they're good options. I personally won't be playing Sean Manor because I prefer some others. But I think I'll play Jeremy Cameron because I think he's the big name who can bob up and really kick a few goals.
Yeah.
That said, Manor could also just play half forward and do what Myers does and get 25 and score really well for GDS too.
He's been coming up to stoppages a lot. That's something that I've seen with the Geelong mix is that he's like their 4th midfielder in there. He doesn't start at CBAs, but he always comes up to stoppages. So that really elevates his scoring. As avoids, we've said Neil Rayner as Supercoach and probably GDS avoids, but Jeremy Cameron is probably not an avoid. Is there any other players that you would think that people may be considering for GDS that may be a bit more of an avoid? Any Ruckman?
I think...
Like, don't go for the Ruckman in this matchup?
Yeah, don't go for the Ruck.
Yeah, no. That's I don't think anyone to be looking at 40 or Stanley or the big Alfie comes in late.
Yeah.
No real big names that people would be.
Logan Morris, like maybe thrown off a little bit after that big game last time.
Look, I'll give you a bit of a pod. That you could go either way. But again, we're talking about the best players, experienced players really stepping up in finals. How about Paddy Dangerfield? How about Paddy? He will obviously play a fair bit of time up forward, but I've got a feeling that Chris Scott may go through the midfield a little bit, Paddy. Just get your body and smash through there, son. And even his ripe old age now, he can do some damage, this man. They've really managed him well, I think, this year. They've parked. Do we still call him a Ferrari? I'm still going to be respectful and call him a Ferrari, but they've just parked it. It is time for him to get into full gear for this game, I think.
Yeah. And then in terms of other pods, we had Josh Dunkley, Wilmot, Stewart, McCluggage. I think they're pretty safe. Another one, Will Ashcroft. We saw what he did against GWS last year in the semi to drag you boys over the line. He's done it in grand finals, obviously as a Norm Smith medalist as well. I think he should just get right back into hunting another medal because that's what he does. He's a winner. So
that's it.
As a pod,
yeah, give him as maybe as a pod. Yeah.
I think the players on this game pick themselves. So I don't think we need to go too far and wide to get really creative and load up on this game.
Yeah, that's it.
Pick
And
the safe.
the reason why, It's a good
Pick
thing
the
you say
safe
that,
ones.
Rossco, because the next game is looking a bit dicey, I must say. So we're going to head now to the first elimination final, which is GWS against Hawthorn. And when I say it looks a bit dicey, these two teams play such contrasting styles of footy. Well, not contrasting in that they can play free-flowing transition footy, but I'm not. It's going to be a really good spectacle to watch in terms of the type of game, but you never know what to expect from these two teams. Like they could both go on to win the grand final. DR, how do you see this game sort of pan out? Give us sort of a synopsis of what you think is going to happen.
Look, played each other once this year, and we need to look all the way back to round 3, where the Hawks prevailed 76-64. If I'm taking a quick look at the stats here, goals, Jesse Hogan was in fine form back then, hitting the scoreboard 4 times. Lockie Whitfield, 34 touches, and Harry Himmelberg with the 11 marks. So some different names there, but Lockie Whitfield, Lockie Ash, the usual suspects in this one that we can select as defenders. I think there's going to be some popular names here for the Giants. For the Hawks, when I'm looking here, lads, I don't know. There's not too many blokes that are really putting their hand up and saying, select me at this point, but you are the men with the data. You're going to let us know if there are any potential pod hawkers for us out there. I'm a lot more keen on the Giants, but take us through some of the numbers, boys, because I'm pretty keen to find out who you're looking at, because I've got a few names locked in, but they're all Giants players at this stage.
Yeah, I actually, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think there's only 2 players here that I'm like very certain on picking, and it's the first 2 that are on the list, the Lockies, Ash and Whitfield. Now, Whitfield's been on absolute fire. He just scored 176 against St Kilda. We couldn't stop him. He was unreal. 155 GDS as well. And he was also unstoppable in the first matchup between these guys this year with 145 for GDS as well. Lockie Ash hasn't been going so greatly. His last 2 scores, 105 and 114, are not amazing, which means in Supercoach, there's a very valuable consideration to be made. We probably have to choose between one of the 2, because you take both, you can't pick a giant elsewhere, and you take both, you can't pick another defender from anywhere either, unless you put them in the flex.
Yep.
So a bit of a coin flip there with these 2. Probably leaning Whitfield at the moment, as he's been in much stronger recent form. But there are some other options as well. We've got Himmelberg and Amon, who are probably going to be the other distribution options. Don't really like Himmelberg too much, but he did have a nice score against him in round 3. Whereas Amon didn't have such a nice score, but did really well last week. And it felt like the ball was really going through him a lot against the Brisbane Lions for a 129. Both of them could be a real left field GDS option for you as well. Now we've got Tom Green and Finn Callahan. Finn Callahan's been in good form, 2 130s in his last 3, but struggles against Hawthorn. Now he scored 55, 54, and 101, and also has struggled in finals with a 3-game average of 67.3. Now I'm not suggesting that he's not a finals player or anything like that, but a restrictive team like the Hawks, who don't really leak points to inside midfielders, probably doesn't bode too well for Green or Callahan, I don't think.
Agreed.
In terms of Newcomb, his scoring is not even elite at the best of times. However, his 2 finals games, he's gone 131 and 149, which is interesting. So he could be a pod option probably for game day squad as well. But I don't recommend taking any of these midfielders, I don't think, for your super coach. We've got the rucks with Briggsy and Meek. If I had to lean towards one, I'd probably take Lloyd Meek. I think he will get the better of the matchup against Briggs, even though the data does say that technically Meek is an easier matchup, being 4th and 2nd than Briggs is. I just think that Meek is the better ruckman, and I think that bodes well for him against Briggs. As you can see, he's gone 118, 109 versus Briggs 99 and 86 the last 2 times they've played each other. Now, the forwards, we've got a lot of key forward options. We've got Cadman, we've got Hogan, we've got Gunston. But then we've also got these sort of annoying smalls that can just drift in and out of games. Toby Green, Dylan Moore, Jack Ginnivan, they can rack up the possessions, score a few goals, and score quite nicely. All of these guys can do it. But can we actually trust any of them to do it this weekend? I don't know.
You made a good point there for me. And it's the fact that I don't trust too many midfielders from this game. And I'm going to go against something that you before, Rossco. You did mention that in your Supercoach side, you may not have both of the Giants defenders in there. Currently, both locked in for me at the moment. Look at Lockie Whitfield, even to game day squad, 125 for an average. That's actually the highest averaging defender we have available there. So I'm pretty happy at the moment, Supercoach wise, to lock those two down back. Keeping in mind as well that I'd love to put a Max Holmes down there, but I can't at the moment. So yeah, I'm pretty keen on the pairing in both formats. Yeah. Locked in both for me.
The only thing that I want to just bring up is Sam Mitchell loves a tag. And so I don't have one of them in. We'll see which one it is at the end of this. But in terms of Supercoach, GDS is a totally different story. I feel like you've got to start both. But from a Supercoach perspective, is there potentially the chance that some attention goes to one of them? Because you've got Ginnivan, who lined up against Zorko on the weekend, like clearly from the get-go, the plan was to annoy him a little bit. And he got under his skin pretty early. And Zorko, for the most part, was actually subdued for most of the game. Does something similar happen to Whitfield in this game, knowing that, or Ash, probably Whitfield, given he's like the more attacking, more firebrand, has a bit more defensive accountability to him in that way. Is that something that we need to consider? And it's to the point where you don't have to pick two Giants, or you don't have to pick two of any team for that matter. And so I don't think we need to necessarily pick Ash and Whitfield for the sake of doing so. And so for me, it comes down to two of Zorko, Whitfield, and Ash. And which two do I trust the most?
I'd agree.
From that perspective. The other sort of interesting name there, and I guess if we can touch on some of the other game data as well, but Toby Green, for me, is such an intriguing prospect. And I've actually got him locked into my Supercoach forward line at the moment. In terms of a captain, that they probably isn't a great matchup for him. He might get all Australian, one of the best defenders in the league, Joshy Battle on him. I say that, but Toby Green is just one of those players. Yes, he final records doesn't necessarily say he's going to be overly great, but are there too many better forward options than him? Like, I think this is one of those matchups that he should play quite well. He's gone 124 and 126 in two of his last three games. And the way that he stood up for the Giants against St Kilda just tells me that he's ready for it.
Yeah.
And so in that way, potentially one to consider, although the matchup data isn't there, given that Hawthorn is one of the hardest oppositions for general forwards going both ways. And then equally, what do we think of Dylan Moore? He's played a little bit more midfield in the weeks gone by. He's been a little bit inconsistent, where you can see from Supercoach 78 and 140. He's probably the Hawk that if I was to play a Hawk, it'd probably be Dylan Moore. What do you boys think?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think, that'd probably be the way you'd have to go. Maybe Amon, but I don't want to pick him in the defense. So,
no, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a good shout about the potential tag to either Whitfield or Ash. That's something I wasn't really considering. Do they go to Whitfield, don't they? Probably.
You would think so. You would think
that's scary.
Jeez, it's hard not to lock Whitfield down back, though, isn't it? It's hard not to put his name in.
Ash is the safe one, I feel. Like, you're probably going to get 100 from Ash regardless. He'll get his. But with Whitfield, he's either going to be an 80 or 130 type.
Well,
so are we saying that for Supercoach, we're likely in our defensive line whacking Ash in there and then deciding probably between Whitfield and Zorko, whichever way you want to go there. Yeah, I agree. That's the way I've been looking at it myself.
But then can I throw in against North Melbourne that Lockie Ash got the Constanti tag and had a really, really, really terrible game. Now, if they go to Lockie Ash, he's shown before that he struggles.
Yep.
So,
and Whitfield's faced Jordan attention multiple times. He'd be used to it in a way. So, in that sense, potentially it's a case of overthinking and you just roll with both of them. But I've just really liked the Zorko matchup against Geelong at the same time. You can't pick all three unless you choose to go one in the flex, which may be the way to go in the end, isn't it?
Well, with GDS, the other thing you got to also take into account is, are you playing your bronze, your silver, your gold as well?
Yeah.
So do we maybe bronze them up this week? Gold homes.
Yeah. It's much easier to mitigate the tag risk in GDS, I feel, just by playing a lower variant.
You have to play in both. Yeah. You have to play in both. It's just what level are you going to go to?
100%.
Platinum.
Straight up. Very quickly, gents, I'm going to get through some data just to show, again, just overall. We saw that Finn Callahan and Tom Green really struggled early this year, as Rossco mentioned, but it was just a dour game. Like, Hawthorn got the Chockies by 2 goals, but there's some names in here like Will Day, Cam McKenzie, Nick Watson, Lloyd Meek, Blake Hardwick were the top 5 scorers. Like, they're just hard to predict. Harry Himmelberg and Whitfield there, as you mentioned in DR, so something like that. But this was a game where Toby Bedford was running through that midfield and tagging Will Day, and he still scored quite well. Now with Bedford not tagging and Rouston / O'Halloran in there, it's just a really weird game, I feel, to really predict anything. And if we look at a GDS perspective, Lockie Whitfield top scored that game. And you know Sam Mitchell loves a tag. Like when he had Finn McGuinness in there, he just tagged to death. You almost felt. You can't really go Nick Watson, though. It's a very, very brave call that way. We'll just have a look at some GWS final stats. So in there, this is a good game for you, DR. The semi-final against you boys at NG. Jesse Hogan towed up, who would it be? Jack Payne, I think.
Yeah, would have been.
Cal Ward's no longer on the list. No longer playing, unfortunately. Kieran Briggs performed quite well, but it doesn't really show much. There's Tom Green's in there, okay, but Lockie Whitfield and Lockie Ash wasn't a defender. I don't think there's too much you can actually take out of previous finals performances for the Giants because just so much has changed from that perspective. And when we think about the Hawks, Rossco, you were talking about Jai Newcomb. He was a force in both their finals against Port Adelaide and Hawthorn last year. And they did really well against Port Adelaide. You can see that Sicily performed quite well going forward at the end there. Dylan Moore at the same time. And if we have a look at this Bulldogs elimination final, again, a lot of boys played quite well. Newcomb, Sicily, Dylan Moore's probably not there to be found, but he did perform quite well from a fantasy perspective. So definitely one to consider there. All right. There's not too many names, boys, so hopefully we can go through this quite quickly. But I'll handball it over to you now, Rossco.
Yep.
You can go first. That's okay, mate.
That's fine.
You have as a lock, avoid, and a pod from this matchup.
So for me, one lock is Lockie Whitfield. I've got him in my defence, and I've got him platted up in my classic side and golded up in my contender side this week. So this talk is not something that I want to hear, but I think I like him still, regardless of whether he's going to cop a tag. I think I still like the pick. My avoid is Tom Green. I just think the way he plays in general and the way that this game is probably going to go with restrictive midfields, it's not good for him. You know, he'll probably still get his possessions and a lot of handballs, but it just doesn't score well. You know, he needs to be really, really dominant to score well, I think, in Supercoach, and I don't think that will happen in this game. I don't think the Hawks will just let him run around doing what he wants. In terms of a pod, I think I'm going to go with Dylan Moore.
I
know. We're probably all going to say the same name.
That's all right.
But he does have the potential to put up those big scores. And, you know, if he gets that bit of midfield time, he scored 140 and 110 in 2 of his last 3 games. There's no reason he couldn't do it again. But he's another floor type player. His floor is stinky. So we have to be really careful not picking too many Dylan Moore types, I think.
Yeah, that's all good, mate.
Like
All right, DR, who's your lock, avoid, and pod from this game?
I'll go with the other easy one for me. I think it's Lockie Ash. We've already talked about his numbers before, but I'll just quickly go over again. Top 5 for kicks and handballs, top 2 for eligible finals players down back. So I think he's a really easy one. We've already talked about him. Now, the avoid that I'm going to put out there is Kieran Briggs. And the reason for that is because I simply think there are better options than him available. Be going Meek over Briggs. We've already talked about Darcy Cameron as well. So given the fact that we only need to select one ruckman in Supercoach, I just don't think that one ruckman should be Kieran Briggs. I think Cameron's such an easier lock over him and pair him maybe with the Dacos. And the pod, now we did just say that there's probably 3 blokes that you're looking to select from your defensive line, and that's Ash, Whitfield, and maybe Zorko. But we'd also have Carl Amon there as well, who I think may get a little bit of the football. If they kick inaccurately, I can see him getting a few kick-outs. Or potentially, I won't say, but you might have him, but their captain, James Sicily. I haven't talked about Sicily at all, but we know he's a captain. If they decide to try to free him up a little bit there, those contested intercept marks are like gold. So who knows? He could pop off for a game, but I think there are better options at the same time.
Agreed, mate. Nah, great points all around there. You haven't really left me with much.
I know. Sorry.
In terms
You're
of
a
a
good
lock,
man leaving us before you.
in terms of a lock, I guess I'll go Jai Newcomb. He's not a lock. Let's get that straight. Like this is Ash and Whitfield are the locks. I've got to take someone in the category. Newcomb, just the finals pedigree. He just seems like the type that's a finals player. And I think he can get it done again. Like Hawks backs against the wall, finishing 8th, even though they're probably not the 8th best team in it, if that makes sense. Like they're probably one of the top 5 or 6 teams in it. But I feel like he can get it done. In terms of the void, I feel like, can I just say anyone that we haven't mentioned? Like it's a lot of players that just don't fill you with much promise. Like there's not many players here. Maybe Finn Callahan is the one that I would be tempted to pick. But anyone else, even from a GDS perspective, there's no real desire to play them, even though someone is going to go off. And I've had Toby Green as a pod option. I think as a forward, he should step up in this game. Maybe it's like the Paddy Dangerfield conundrum for Adam Kingsley, where it's like, look, mate, Toby, go have a stint to the midfield, break things open, and he does it. He can do it. He can lift in games where the team is, if you had to pick a captain in this final series that you know will deliver, I think Toby Green is one of them. So from that perspective, pretty happy to go there. In terms of captains, we'll keep this one very short, boys. It's one of 2 options, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Whitfield or Ash? All right, we'll move them forward into the final discussion then. And then in terms of GDS, so we had locks as Ash and Whitfield, Newcomb as a speculative. You could play him in GDS, but I don't think his upside is higher in GDS as it is in Supercoach. As avoids, we had Kieran Briggs, Tom Green. I said basically anyone else. And as pods, Amon Sicily, Dylan Moore, Toby Green. They feel pretty comparative between Supercoach and GDS for this matchup in particular, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. So I reckon we leave it there for that matchup. Again, probably the most dour fantasy matchup across the 4, because I think this next one, boys, is probably the most open fantasy matchup across Supercoach and GDS across the 4. That is Fremantle and Gold Coast at Optus Stadium. There's a lot of popular names in this one. Do you want to take us through what you think the game will sort of unfold as?
Firstly, I'd just like to congratulate our little brothers up there in Queensland for making their first final series. I know I was being a little bit of a smart aleck there, but genuinely, congratulations. It's really great for Queensland football. 15, 16 years in the comp, so lots of long-suffering fans. I think it's fantastic that the Suns are playing finals. So congratulations to all the Suns fans and the Suns players as well. But yeah, this got to be a big one, boys. Now, the last time that these fellas met was back in round 12, and it was 64-75. So the Dockers just got the chockies there. And if we look at the stats from those games, some of the match leaders, Rossco, our man, Shea Bolton, led the goal kicking. The great man scored 3 on the night there. Noah Anderson, 39 touches, and congratulations to Noah Anderson, Champions Player of the Year. And for the mark tally, it's Mac Andrew, who we all rated as a top 10 pick when we redrafted that crop. So a few different names there. Wouldn't necessarily be looking at Mac Andrew, but boys, we know, particularly when we look at our Supercoach here, when it comes to the matchups, is that this year the Gold Coast Suns have been a good matchup for opposition midfielders. So Andrew Brayshaw has fallen off a little bit. Sarong, he's had an indifferent type season from a Supercoach perspective, but given the matchup here, they're two names that may be pretty popular. And then we look to the Gold Coast midfielders as well. It's going to be hard to deny selecting one or two of these guys in Supercoach, but in GDS, we've obviously got a few more slots there. So I think they're going to be some really popular players. But boys, where do you think this one is going? Do you think that the Suns may get their first finals victory, or do you think it's going to be too much of an ask having to go over there to Perth?
I think the Dockers get it done. They've been one of those teams again that at their best, they play like a top 2, top 3 side. At home, huge win against the Dogs. If they play that brand of footy, they should get this done. What do you reckon, Rossco?
I think they played their grand final last week.
Who? Gold Coast or Freo?
No, Freo. I think the Gold Coast are going to come in fresh off a pumping against Essendon. They're going to be hungry in their first final series, and they're going to knock them off.
Ooh,
It'd be a very Fremantle. It'd be a very Fremantle.
It would be very Fremantle. It would be very Fremantle.
I think the Suns will win.
But what you're saying there is the fact that I think Freo wins and Ross thinks Gold Coast wins probably means it's going to be quite a close game. As in, you wouldn't think that it should be a blowout unless Freo really gets on a roll to start off with. They've both got really good players across the board. DR, who's your tip very quickly?
I'm going Suns. I'm going the Suns.
The upset.
Yeah, a little bit of gut feel here, but I think that Noah Anderson is a man that will be built for finals along with Matt Rowell. So, yeah, I'm tipping the Suns to get up.
Awesome. All right. Well, Rossco, let's dive into the data then.
Yes. Now, I'll preface this data to say that we've looked far and wide and we could not find a Supercoach or a game day squad score for round 24, Gold Coast versus Essendon. Now, Noah Anderson had 34 disposals and 3 goals. Matt Rowell had 31 and 2 goals. John Noble had 32 disposals. So we're going to say that Rowell and Anderson hypothetically scored 150 plus each. Noble probably got 100. Ben King probably got about 150 with his 7 goals or whatever it was. So even though we've got some yellow and some red here, if we were to add in these big scores for Rowell and Anderson, they're probably starting to turn light green in terms of their averages. Now, we'll go from the start. We'll go with the defenders. Jordan Clark is an interesting one with Gold Coast being rated the 4th and 3rd easiest matchup in the last 5 and 10 for designated kickers. Now, I think Jordan Clark's sort of one of these players where if his head's in the game, he just takes over. I don't know if you guys sort of agree with that.
He is,
watching them a few times, there's been games where he just goes through the motions and he still gets the ball, but he doesn't put up big scores. But then there's other games where everything goes through him. He wants the ball. His head's in the game. He's tackling. He's running to get the cheap marks. And those are the games that we want to play him in. Now, against the Suns on that wet day over in the Gold Coast last time, he scored 143. So that was one of those games where he was like, yeah, okay, the bootlaces are tied and, I'm ready to go. Can he do it again? Not sure, but the Suns are a good matchup for it. We've also got Ryan, who's a chip mark merchant, takes the kick-ins, and it's at Optus where he loves playing. So I think he's an uber pod for GDS. Now, John Noble is another pod, I think. He's lost a little bit of the role with Dan Rioli coming back in there against Essendon. but he's still got his 32 disposals. So whether they can share the ball remains to be seen. But I think he'll go okay. I think he'll go a little bit better than okay. Brayshaw and Sarong, playing at home, did really well against the Suns in the first matchup this season. Their averages aren't amazing over the last three, and even at Optus as well, which is a bit surprising, but it's a finals game. I can see them both scoring pretty well, and I think for me it's going to be hard to leave one of them out, or even both of them. I don't really know what to do with them because I feel like one of them could just put up a monster, but I might pick the wrong one. So I don't know how to go there. Same goes with these boys, Rao, Anderson, and Miller. Probably Rao and Anderson a bit more so than Miller. But I know, Janath, you do love your Tuke Miller pod option. Now, their 150s are not reflected there, but they were absolutely huge against Essendon. And yes, it's Essendon. But these guys get on a roll. They take games apart. And I think I want to be with one of these guys as well. It's an open matchup. And Anderson scored 136 the last time out. Rao scored 131. And they both go pretty well at Optus as well. In terms of the rucks, I think this is going to be more restricting ruck game as well, with Witts being a really good restricting ruckman and Darcy Jackson combination the other way. So I would probably avoid picking the two direct rucks. Luke Jackson, I think, might still have a spot as a forward, perhaps, for game day squad. Maybe not for Supercoach. And then the rest, we've got Bolton, Tracy, Humphrey, and King. Not sure if I'm trusting any of them at all in Supercoach. Game day squad, maybe.
Awesome.
I like it, Rossco.
There are so many good forwards, not forwards, midfielders in this matchup that you could go with. And Caleb Sarong is the one that I feel is going so under the radar. I have him in my Supercoach side at the moment because Butters went huge against Gold Coast midfield. The Dons played basically whoever. Callahan and Green went big against the Gold Coast midfield a couple of weeks ago. Like, I don't think that ease of matchup is quite reflective of how easy the matchup actually is for them. Playing at home, he's basically the spiritual leader in that way. Do you boys think that if you had to rank the five midfielders, so that's Sarong, Brayshaw, Anderson, Tuke, Rao, 1 to 5, how would you rank them?
So I'm going to go Sarong, Anderson, Tuke, Rao, Brayshaw.
Yeah. Repeat that again, mate.
Miller last.
Yeah.
Sarong fourth. And then I would pop Anderson third, Brayshaw 2, Rao 1.
Brayshaw 2.
Yes.
I would flip Brayshaw and Sarong. And that would probably be my order.
For me, I've got Tuke at 5. I've got Brayshaw at 4. Got Rao at 3. Sarong at 2. And Anderson at 1.
Anderson and Rao swip. Yeah.
The reason why I've got Sarong just above Rao is because of that matchup as well. And when I'm comparing Brayshaw and Sarong, what I tend to do a lot of the time is just go back to who's the more contested player because we're stepping up to a final series here. Get your hands dirty type operator. And that's probably Caleb Sarong for me. But look, boys, would we be surprised to see any of these blokes finish as the highest scorer? I don't think so. It is really tough. We really need to nitpick some of these stats, and a lot of it's going to be gut feel, a little bit of luck. But all of these players within their own right, even Tuke, who we've got at number 5, would you be surprised to see someone like Tuke Miller? It's their first final, right? Yeah. Tuke Miller has Gold Coast blood running through his veins. So if there is one player on that list that'll be the hungriest dog out there, I think it's probably Tuke Miller. So, we don't have any data on how Gold Coast players have gone in finals, obviously, but I'd suggest that Tuke Miller could be a real dark horse here, that maybe I'll just give a bit of a slap at 5. He could easily be the number 1 scorer. Who knows?
And it's so interesting to me in terms of someone like an Andy Brayshaw. How does he sort of play in this game? I've got some finals data from 2022 to show to you boys in a little bit about Freo, and both Sarong and Brayshaw performed exceptionally in both of those games. So That's one to consider there. And then those defenders, like there's relevant defenders, there's relevant midfielders. But are there relevant forwards? Luke Jackson is a ruck option. Is he someone that you consider instead of Darcy Cameron? Because he's not going to be playing as a ruck, but he playing as a midfielder, he could score quite well.
I don't know. I haven't seen it recently, though.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about Dogger. I really don't know what to do about Dogger. I think, well, he's more of surely a GDS pick, given the fact he's a forward.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of confidence with him, to be quite honest. I don't know. Rossco, do you have any confidence in Dogger?
Well, I think game day, I'll take him as a bronze. He did go well, 122 and 131 GDS. But I think that was also a wet game, and it probably played into his sort of preferred conditions a little bit, being a big guy, tackling and all that sort of stuff. I don't really know because, yeah, it's tricky because he should be, if he's playing that role, he should be popping out hundreds, but he isn't. But he has, if that makes sense. He has done it.
No, yeah.
All right. So maybe we can go and look into some of the other data from different games now. So I'm going to take you boys back to round 12, the matchup from a GDS perspective first. So Jordan Clark was the top scorer there, 30 touches, 146 GDS. Huge. Noah Anderson and Matty Rowell, pretty common sort of candidates there. I guess if you have a look at this, the top sort of six, nothing really surprises you. Anderson,
this
Rowell,
doesn't help me at all.
Ron Jackson. And so Shea Bolton's in there at 124, John Noble at 100. So there's a lot of very relevant names that could just repeat the same dose. This was at People's First Stadium. But yeah, from that perspective, if we have a look at sort of, if I go to this one and we just have a look at some team by team stats. So again, Jordan Clark performed quite well. This was the game, I think, boys, when it comes to mind, Andy Brayshaw almost got knocked out at the end, and Shea Bolton kicked a couple of snags in the last quarter to get them over the line. I'm pretty sure that this was that game. But yeah, Andy Brayshaw, 123. Caleb Sarong, 97. And then on the other side, Anderson and Rowell did quite well.
Now, what I think is interesting there, Janath, is Anderson had 39 touches and a tackle, whereas Rowell had only 27 but had 13 tackles.
13 tackles.
Do you think that's something that's just a bit of an anomaly? Like, I know that Rowell generally does lay more tackles than Anderson does, but surely we're not going to be watching some sort of pigging like this from Anderson again without him getting a bit down and dirty with it, Yeah.
It's the type of players they are, though. Like, Anderson has always been more of that outside player, whereas Rowell's a bit more inside. They can both get the job done, like, regardless. And DA, if you had to pick one, who do you trust more? I know you said Anderson before, but if you had to hard on the line for Supercoach, who would you pick?
I'm going to go with the Champions Player of the Year. I'm going with Anderson. I think the captain, and listening to him speak the other night as well. And this is no disrespect to Matt Rowell. They are so hard to split, but I've just got Anderson there. I think that there's and they're getting rarer by the day, but there are times where Rowell can have a really, really quiet game. But I think Anderson now has really proven, particularly as he stepped up as captain, that he just finds so much of that football that he'll get the job done. So it's just Noah Anderson for me, not by a heap.
Yeah, Rossco, you said Rowell before, right?
Yeah, Matt Rowell. I actually think a part of that as well, a very small part of it, is if the Dockers decided to go with some attention, I think it'd be more likely to go to Anderson.
Yes,
true.
Good point.
True.
Great point.
Yeah, true.
But if they didn't go to Barker, Bontempelli, I don't think they'll put some attention going through in this game. That's just my opinion there. All right, we'll just look at some Fremantle previous finals. So this was their semi-final against Collingwood in 2022. A lot of familiar names here. Caleb Strong at the top. Blake Acres, Carlton legend, is second. Lukey Ryan, 119. Hayden Young, a player we haven't talked about, but definitely the finals type. in there. Andy Brayshaw 99, but we can see in terms of fantasy points, he had 32 touches, 8 tackles, 4 marks,
David
had a really
Mundy.
good game. David Mundy, yes. There are some names in here. Griffin Logue in there as well. We'll go to this one now. This was the elimination final against Western Bulldogs at Optus Stadium. So I feel like this is quite a similar type of game. Luke Ryan, top score 126. Hayden Young, the 120 there. Caleb Strong, 108. Andy Brayshaw, again, 92, but 121 fantasy points. Again,
It's good for GDS.
Has things changed? Yeah, very good for GDS. Not so good for Supercoach. But
10.
we can see going through Jordan Clark, 91. There's not too much given away in both of their finals. There wasn't too many high scorers, but I still think that there are some relevant picks. And yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to go through. There's no finals data for Gold Coast as of yet, as to look at, obviously. But let's crack into some of these locks, pods, and avoids then. Now, I would love to give it to you, but because I had the unholy grail of having to pick a lock out of Hawks and GWS, I will go first here.
Selfish. That's selfish.
All right. In terms of a lock, this is very tough because when we're looking across the lines, there are great players on each of the lines. I think that I think Caleb Sarong. I'm going to go Caleb Sarong. It's going to be the lock that I'm going to go with. It's very hard to split. For me, Anderson, Rao, and Sarong. I think along with Dacos and Dawson, I'm going to go with 2 of them. Which 2 of them is the question. There. In terms of the avoid, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one. I'm going to go with Andy Brayshaw as the avoid.
Ooh.
Now, yes, I had him 4th amongst that mix and even ahead of Took, but there's just something about the last stretch of the season. Yes, he still scored hundreds, but they were not big hundreds like we saw at the start of the year. And I think the other 3 boys, when we're looking at it comparatively, the other 3 boys are better options, I feel. But I say this, and I'm going to pick a pod midfielder. That's not Took. It's Hayden Young.
Oh,
Hayden
nice.
Young, if he gets fully unleashed, we know what he can do. It's a final. You put him out there and let him run, and I think that's a decent pod that you could go for. But it's very risky. It's not for the faint-hearted, especially when there's 3 definite better midfielders in this matchup, and then probably 2 others in Took and Brayshaw as well. But there we are. All right, Rossco, who's your lock, avoid, and pod?
For me, my lock is Matt Rao. I think the way that he's really elevated himself as a Supercoach star this season has just been something very special to watch. And I think he's less likely to cop any tag than Noah Anderson. He can score not only through racking up a lot of the ball, which he doesn't always do, but he gets a lot of tackles, rewarded for things like holding the ball, free kicks 4. It just really helps him scoring. It keeps him ticking along. And he doesn't necessarily need to have a mass amount of touches to have a big impact with it. We've seen how he can break away from stoppage, hit someone on the lead, and I think he is the lock that I want. In terms of my avoid, I'm going to keep it simple here, DR. I'm going to pick from the lower echelon. I'm going to go with Sean Darcy. I know people probably not really going to be picking Sean Darcy anyway, but if you were considering it with them being at home, playing against Jared Witts, I just don't really like it all that much. In terms of a pod, I'm going to throw out John Noble. I think we've called him a pod every week for the last 6 weeks, honestly. He just keeps turning up and getting the job done.
He does it. He gets the job done.
So, I think I'll lock in John Noble as my pod.
Very nice, mate. And DR,
Like it, mate.
I think I know where your lock is going.
Well, we're going Noah, aren't we, as a lock? So we're locking in Noah every day of the week. And again, I'm not going to go through all these numbers because we've talked a fair bit about him. Now, the avoids, you could avoid Shea Bolton. I'm not a big fan of him. But Sam Flanders is probably a man that, if you asked me last year, I would have said lock the man in. But I'm avoiding him at the moment simply because the role is not there. And we've already talked about, 3 midfielders that are going to be well ahead of him for that CBA. So I'll be avoiding Flanders. And just to throw potentially a bit of a pod down back, Jordan Clark. Jordan Clark, he's someone that can rack up a heap of appeal, obviously playing at home as well, which he likes. And although we may go with either your Whitfield, your Ash, your Zorko, even a real Amon pod or your Noble pod, I actually really like that John Noble selection there, Rossco. But just to add another defender to the mix, we'll go with Jordan Clark, because if you look at our forward line, you're not going to select a Fremantle forward. You're probably not going to go Dogger. I think there are other better options there. You'll only most likely go one of Sarong and Brayshaw. And so that leaves another Freo spot there. I think I'd be happy to look at Clark as a pod if need be.
Very nice there, mate. In terms of captains, Sarong, Rowell, and Anderson can all be possible captaincy options.
Yeah.
I'm going Anderson for me.
You go, as in that's who in your team right now. Is that who you'd captain?
Well, out of the three, he would be
Out of
my selected captain out of the three. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, before we get to our final captaincy rankings, then GDS. So GDS locks, avoids pods. We've said Sarong, Rowell, and Anderson as locks. In that perspective, is there any sort of player that, like a Jordan Clark, does he become a lock in GDS, given we have to fit in 7 defenders?
Yes, he does for me.
Yeah.
He does for me.
Jordan Clark is an easy pick, I think.
Yeah.
And then anyone else that you would treat as a lock for GDS?
I think Noble.
Yeah.
I think we play him, John Noble. I'm personally looking at playing both Rowell and Anderson, which doesn't leave me room for any Freo. But I've got Luke Jackson.
Is this for Supercoach now? Is this
no
Supercoach?
GDS?
GDS, okay. Yep.
I don't think I'm brave enough to pick both Rowell and Anderson for Supercoach.
Luke Ryan, is he worth any sort of a shout here? Any sort of a shout?
As a
Luke Ryan pod?
Yeah. I'm playing starter, classic, challenger, and champion somehow. And so Lukey Ryan is just a matter of necessity, because there's just not that many cards available to fill in all the spots.
That's true.
So yeah, definitely as a pod option, like you boys mentioned, playing at home should be okay. A Bailey Humphrey type, like, could he break open a final series as a forward option?
Can't trust him.
Can't trust him.
No.
Fair enough.
It's like picking Bolton.
As a pod GDS option, it depends, and it also depends on what cards people have as well. Like, some people just don't have the full deck of cards, and you can't be that picky. So if you've got 1-2 slots left and you see Bailey Humphrey there, I certainly don't think he's going to be the worst selection, depending on who you currently own in GDS.
All right, I might throw one more name into the hat here.
Let's
I actually forgot to do the data for him. He had an absolute legacy game against the Western Bulldogs. Pick 7 in the Dacos whatever draft.
Oh,
Superstar,
no. Oh, no. Giant miss.
He had 3 goals at halftime. Get him in.
Oh, no. Well, if you're going to say Giant miss, you might as well say Josh Tracy. Like, Tracy's...
Nah, because Josh Tracy just wasn't doing it. Giant miss stood up.
Big Paddy Voss with his chest out. He'll be going half a finals.
But I will also add one other play in this. Someone who I think is built for finals, a Robbie Gray clone, Murphy Reid.
Oh,
your boy.
Built
Murphy.
for finals. He is built for finals, that bloke.
Not a bad
I did
goal.
stock up on a few of him off the transfer market for game day squad.
Very nice. Very nice, mate.
Getting early, Rossco. You are really one for the future, aren't you, mate? Getting your Murphy Reids and stuff. Yeah, I rate that.
Well, boys, I say now we've gone through all the matchups pretty comprehensively as well. Throughout this, we've listed 10 potential captaincy options. We're going to go through and rank them 1 to 3. Not all 10, but who you rate 1 to 3 from this list. So Jordan Dawson and Nick Dacos from Collingwood, Adelaide. Bailey Smith, Max Holmes and Hugh McCluggage from Geelong, Brisbane. Lockie Ash and Lockie Whitfield from Hawks, GWS. And Caleb Sarong, Matty Rowell and Noah Anderson from Freo, Gold Coast. off those 10 names, how would you rank them 1 through 3? I might start. I think I have. This is risky. But I think I have Jordan Dawson at number 1. I then have. This is hard. I think I put Caleb Sarong at number 2 and Nick Dacos at number 3.
Oh, I'm close.
Really bullish on Sarong.
I am
close.
I'm big on Sarong. All right, DR, you go. If you're saying you're close, that must mean we're one away.
One off. Yep. So I've got the 2 captains as one and one at 2. So Jordan Dawson is at number 1 for me as well, mate. I've got Noah Anderson at number 2 and Nick Dacos at number 3.
Ooh,
these are all blokes that have huge ceilings when they're on. It's really stuck in my head, Janath, from that potty we had a couple of weeks ago about finals and captains and really stepping up and leading in those big games. And that's what really lends me to put 2 of those captains right up the top there. And it's hard to, at the same time, it's hard not to include Nick Dacos in the top 2, but I've got him just behind at 3rd. How about you, Rossco?
Get some peopling attention, but should be okay.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going with Bailey Smith, number 1.
Oh, Smith.
As Lenker against the Lions.
All right.
Number 2, Nick Dacos against the Crows. And for me, number 3 is, what's his name? Matt Rowell.
Matty Rowell. All right, some unique names in there. I like it. Well, so we've all got Nick Dacos in the top 3. And then Dia and I, we both have Jordan Dawson. And then we have a split of Bailey Smith, Matty Rowell, Noah Anderson, Sarong. But the names coming up, there's no GWS Hawks players in this mix at all. Like, there's pretty commonality there. Before we go and reveal our final Supercoach final sides, well, not final, but our sides at the moment, I've got 3 questions for you boys very quickly from Twitter. So Noah Anderson and Matty Rowell, if you had to go for one of the GCS boys, I'd say Anderson. Rossco?
I'm saying Rowell. I've stuck with him.
Rowell.
Anderson.
And Dia. Anderson.
No,
awesome.
Both
Just a
good
fan,
options.
thank you. Silver Pigeon, a legend. If not too
Great
late
name.
and not discussed, which rucks for Supercoach, we're pretty much in consensus that you have to play Darcy Cameron.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then for GDS, you got to play 2 of them, Darcy Cameron and Lloyd Meek.
Lloyd Meek.
Meek.
Agreed.
We're in consensus there as
Agreed.
well. Awesome. And then the final question here from Blue Ballers, Thriller or Sack Bailey?
Ooh.
Let's say this is for Supercoach and for GDS, if you had to pick. For GDS,
Thilthorpe.
probably Thilthorpe.
Yeah.
For Supercoach, might have to go to the Brisbane Lions expert here. Bailey?
Well, maybe I'm just trying to be so unbiased, but I'm going the Thriller, I think, for me. I think that Bailey won't be in that midfield as much as what we've seen in the last few weeks with Lockie Neal coming in. And I think that Adelaide are going to beat Collingwood. And I also think that Thilthorpe is that second ruck, may get a fair advantage there as well. So that's just what's getting it over the line for me.
Awesome. Well, I think I like Thilthorpe as well. Having owned him, he can own a big game. And potentially this is the one for him. The last question there in that as well. DCAM or Big Lloyd Meek?
DCAM 1, Meek 2.
DCAM 1, Meek 2. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, we went through the questions there. The final part here is we're going to do a very quick reveal of our sides. Our Supercoach AFL sides. Now, I'm happy to go first here and just talk through the key decisions I had between now and Thursday. So this is it. There was a little bit of tinkering done throughout this episode as well. So plenty to learn off you boys as well in terms of what we're talking about. Love having a chat with you blokes. So from the defense, Zorko and Ash. So it's going to be Zorko, Whitfield, Ash. 2 of those 3 for me. In the midfield, I've gone with the 4 mids there. Dacos, Sarong, Rowell, Dawson. Now, I know Sarong was 2 in the midfielders in terms of captaincy for me. So whether the VC goes on which of these 2 is still up in air, but I love going the 4 midfield option. I think most coaches will do that this week. So yeah, the other one there's Noah Anderson as well. I've got Rail in there. Oh, it's so tough to split them. Honestly, like I think one of the points you mentioned, Rossco, about tags possibly lends towards Rail. I said Anderson before. It's up in air. Probably that's probably the hardest pick. Which two of Sarong, Rail, and Anderson I go for? Cameron, a lot of coach will have him. And then it's going to be two of Thilthorpe, Brian Myers, and Toby Green as forwards for me. So pretty settled as a side. What are you boys looking at? We'll go with you, DR.
All right, I'll just get my screen up here. All right, so I'm actually pretty similar to you, brother.
That's good to
I'll
hear.
just share that. Hopefully we can see.
Yep.
Can we see that?
Got it.
Yep. So why is Lockie Ash the captain? Come on, Lockie, get your hand off it, mate.
It's very similar.
So, as I mentioned before, right at the top, I do have the two GWS boys there in Ash and Whitfield. I'd have the option to go Zorko if I like down there. So that's potentially a change that I may make. Also talked about Jordan Clark as well as another potential option, but I'm pretty settled on the two Giants boys for now. You got Dacos and Anderson. I've been huge on Anderson the whole way. Also paired him up with Caleb Sarong there. So I think the only difference in that midfield is that you're currently going with Rail over Anderson. Then you've got Zorko down back, brother. And I think from then on out, we are absolutely the same. So we've talked about DCAM a lot. He's locked in as my ruck. We've gone Big Thriller along with Brian Myers, who was one of my locks earlier on, and Jordan Dawson as that flex with the extra midfielder. I think that's how most teams are going to go, mate. I don't really see anyone taking a Zorko Clark type over a Rail. You could throw a number of midfield names out there. So potential changes for me, maybe one of the Giants out. And Sarong, I'd love to get Huey McCluggage in there. I don't have any of my own boys here, which absolutely kills me. So probably if I was to make another change, it would be Sarong out and I'd get Huey in for Sarong, I think. But apart from that, forwards and rucks are pretty much locked in for me at this stage.
I guess the other thing very quickly, with the fact that one player drops off, you could almost go for a higher upside forward, probably, like a Toby Green, that it even has even if he scores 60, you would back in the rest of the squad to deliver quite a handy score.
Good point. Yeah.
But looking forward to seeing how this goes. And Rossco, very keen to see your side. Bailey Smith better be in there.
He is.
He is. Very good. Let's see it.
Here we go.
Oh, very nice.
I'm gonna drop in a cheeky Darcy Wilmot in there at the moment.
Oh yes,
Darcy Will. He's gone the 30 max.
Go Rossco.
I'm gonna hold him for now. I don't want to do a backflip and take him out at the last minute, but that might be what happened. I don't know. Other than that, I've gone with Whitfield, Dawson, Rao, Bailey Smith as the captain, as promised. I think he's going to go big this weekend, boys. Darcy Cameron, Thilthorpe Myers, and Dacos with the vice. So for me, I think the captaincy is pretty set, and I'm pretty happy with where this sits. It's just Wilmot. Do I take it to Zorko? Do I take it to Ash? I think I might just back myself in. You know what? Supercoach finals, why not? Now, interestingly, nice, I will show you this, which I think is a little bit more interesting than my finals team. Okay. I will show you now my classic game day squad here. Ooh. I'll zoom out of that one so you can see. So we're going the Platinum Whitfield.
Geez, you're a high roller. Look at all these plats and oh my goodness. It's like I've gone to GDS heaven.
So we've gone Lockie Ash, Max Holmes. Is that Darcy Wilmot there as well? Yeah, might change him to Zorko. Jordan Clark, Josh Worrell was a bit of a pod, and John Mogul was a bit of a pod as well. The three Platinum midfield stars, Dawson, Dacos, and Dunkley, with McCluggage, Rao, and Anderson to settle that off. Cameron and Meek, Platinum Baz with Myers and Cameron. Luke Jackson, Thilthorpe Keys, Toby Green as a pod to sort of round it all off. Hopefully.
You're winning that. You're winning.
That can be the winning formula.
You're winning this, Rossco.
Hopefully that can be the winning formula.
Love
I'll get Dane Zorko in there as soon as we stop recording this, I think.
Very nice, mate. Love that.
Rate that.
Boys, it has been an absolute monster of an episode. Yeah. I think this has been one of the most enjoyable from a sort of statistical / analysis / like our just genuine passion for the footy as well. Talking Supercoach, talking GDS. We've gone through every single matchup, provided 3 locks, 3 avoids, 3 pods for both Supercoach and GDS. We've ranked our top captains. We provided all the good oil and the data there. We've answered your questions, and we've shown you or revealed our Supercoach finals sides. With that, boys, I reckon we call it there. Stay tuned for the official Captain's Corner / finals data for both Supercoach and GDS to drop on the Third Man Up Twitter / X probably tomorrow on Monday, Rossco. Is there anything that you boys want to end on?
Nah, good luck for the first week of finals. It should be a good round of footy.
Yeah, and likewise, Rossco, great to sit down with you boys. Sorry, I should have been a little bit more prepared. I have had a couple of sherbets at the football in the boys' celebrations responsibly, very, very responsibly. So the head has been a little bit all over the place. So I do apologise if I didn't give as much as you two legends tonight. But just a big thank you to the two of you in particular for really running and leading this GDS partnership that we've begun this year with the boys. It's been such an amazing partnership, hasn't it? Just a great connection between ourselves and lads as well. You guys are going to cover obviously the EPL as well, some other sports as well, and obviously Supercoach. We're called Supercoach Swordplay. That's always been our first type love. But it's nice to have just a little something on the side there as well. But our love is becoming greater and greater. But maybe we need to work out some sort of double marriage operation, go less traditional here, fellas, and see how we go.
Look, I personally view them as the older brother and the younger brother, so that there's no issues with marriage. But
yeah, I'm making it a little bit weird with the whole marriage thing. We'll go brothers, and all right.
But we do have something special for anyone that's still tuning in 2 hours into this podcast. We have a giveaway, a GDS giveaway of 3 9-player common packs. So all you've got to do is comment down below who you think will be the highest scoring GDS player in each of the 4 games. Now, whether or not we randomly choose who wins or we reward someone who has their tactical hat on and can pick some of those high scorers out will remain to be seen, but we will be giving away 3 9 common player packs for AFL. All you've got to do is comment down below your sort of the high scoring player in each of the finals. But yeah, we'll leave it at that then. Lads, good luck for this week. Good luck for both Supercoach finals and GDS finals. And we'll see you guys next week for a condensed version of the finals preview. See you guys.
Sorry about Ridley Spills.